if we were just like the other animals, we wouldn't have this awareness of sin, we wouldn't have this awareness of good and evil. We would have our preferences and so on. We wouldn't think of it that way, as good and evil. But at some point in our past, we became aware of good and evil. And it's our perception of things, it's our value system that gives us that perception of good and evil. And at that point, we fell from that state of nature where everything was basically kind of good. I mean, you still had life and death and all those other things, but you didn't have the perception of something as being evil. And so the idea of evil comes from our awareness as a linguistic, and by the way, Augustine asks where do we learn language? And that's kind of neat because Wittgenstein likes the way Augustine talks about learning language learning. We know, by the way, that it's just absolutely, so basic and so wrong that that's not how it works. But still, the idea is that Augustine is thinking it has to do with language. Language enables us to think of things as good and evil, and as a result, we're aware of things being good and evil, and we get upset with God because things are evil, when it's not God's fault. God created the universe is good. We come along and we hate spaghetti if it's not done right. Well, that's not God's fault. That's your perception of something that you don't like, right? So in a sense, the question of evil is human-centered. It's a human-centered fault, right? So how do we get rid of this? How can we be saved from this? Well, Jesus is the one who is the role model who teaches us this, right? He demonstrates that even under the worst conditions, even to the extent that you're dying on the cross, being persecuted by your friends, abandoned even by God, my God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus still says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So if you think of it that way, what Jesus is teaching us is to turn the other cheek, love your neighbors as yourself, even your enemies, right? Only see the good. Well, if you can only see the good in everything, evil is gone. And the trouble, of course, is following Jesus as a role model and actually thinking everything is good, no matter how bad. Wait, I can't even say that, right? That doesn't work. I can't imagine giving up my attachment to things. Remember, this is a Buddhist problem. This is, nirvana is giving up your attachment to things, including pleasure and pain, right? Not even liking the things you like, right? We still get this teaching, not only from Jesus, but from Buddha and from other ascetics, right? That you're familiar with the word ascetic, you give up everything, right? And if you give up that attachment, you're not only giving up the good, but you're also giving up the evil. Wow, but the hard part is actually following Jesus this way. That calling is just the most difficult thing for humans to do, I guess, right? Giving it up. It was for Augustine. And further about time, all of time is present as far as Augustine is concerned. When I'm thinking about the past is my present memory of the past. I'm worried about the future is my present thinking about the future, right? That's, because all of my experience is present. And that's a modern philosophical, we still have that continuation. Those folks are called presentists. All time is, at the present, etc. Very difficult, I suppose. Now, here's an issue, though, for us. I'll go back to the light cone. So if all of time and space is present, and I'm assuming that the way Einstein talks about it is also something close to what Augustine is describing, then how I'm going to behave in the future is already there, right? Because all time is present. So I think that I'm doing things according to my will in order to achieve a particular goal and so on. Sometimes I achieve it. I'll set my alarm, rings, blah. I don't get up. My failure, my bad. The alarm did its job and I didn't get up. It rings and I get up. Aha! I did my job. Right? I got up. I think I accomplished that. I accomplished this. I joined the army. I passed my Russian course. I got all these awards. I had been married before that, etc. We ended up with children. We wanted 4. We ended up with 4 children. 2 each. Well, at the time, that's how many you could have. 1 of each. 2 of each was, that, etc. Right? I thought that was all because I did a good job, and I felt proud about myself, which, by the way, is an evil. Pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. Just so you know. Did I have free will? And according to both Einstein and Augustine, everything I ever did, I had always had done, or it was already present in the future or the past, what I did in the past. That was always decreed because all of time and space exist at once. Fait accompli, right? My quiz question for you for today is, do you have free will? Did you see that one coming? That was in my notes. So if you looked at the notes for today, notice the free will. Well, Augustine basically has an answer for this. I don't know if you'll accept it or not, but as we're cruising along, we're only capable of understanding the moment as it is. And so, of course, we have free agency. I'm always making my own choices. I'm responsible for the choices I make. And it's not God who's at fault for that. So when God punishes me for the mistakes that I make, it's not unfair. God is punishing me for something I did, and yet God knew that I was going to do it right from the get-go. And it's actually, in another way of thinking, as part of the universe that I was going to make this error. Like I was going to mention another interesting aspect of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, in some stories, Adam was first by himself. There are other stories where Adam has a mate right from the beginning, and both of them arrive at the same time. And it turns out she won't listen to him, so he asks for a new one. It's not my fault. That's Lilith. Have you ever heard of Lilith? Yes, Lilith You got some very interesting pictures of Lilith, by the way. Artists have red hair. Why red hair? I don't know.
Of course, you're seeing Diablo.
You're seeing Diablo stuff.
Yeah, there was
Why
one
is
picture of the
is-
Wikipedia of Lilith out there that had like an actual artist rendition. You can scroll
Oh, up further?
up. Yep, up further, first result. There you go. Wikipedia.
Like this?
Yes.
Well, if you put Adam and Eve after it, I think Google will figure out what you're trying to
Or
say.
Bible.
Something
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, click on it.
Well, in any case, we end up with Adam and Eve. I don't know where Lilith goes.
I think Lilith in the story, at least in like the Jewish tradition, kind of like screws off into like some like chthonic demon realm that's kind of like hell but not hell, and then like I don't know, like
So Hollywood.
I guess. Yeah. I remember like the story of Lilith. I remember talking to this one
There's
Jewish guy who was
MacDonald.
in death.
MacDonald, I can't think of MacDonald's first name, but MacDonald wrote a book called Lilith. Very weird. By the way, that MacDonald was also one of the individuals who inspired C.S. Lewis to write that kind of fantasy. So there's a reason why I read the MacDonald book, because I wanted to see. In fact, the copy I have, the preface is written by C.S. Lewis, talking about how important MacDonald was. And then I read the story and I was like lost. The weirdest stuff. Probably he was on opiates. That's a possibility when he wrote that. But in the first version, Adam by himself is bored. This is a neat thing. Soren Kierkegaard says boredom is the root of all evil. You know, God was bored, so he created the universe. He was still bored, so he created Adam and Eve. Or he created Adam. Adam was bored, so God created Eve. Right? You know, and then look at all the evil that comes as a result of that. You get Cain and Abel, and you know how Cain kills Abel, etc. And then yet you've got all these other people that I don't know where these come from. But, in any case, Adam in Hebrew means breath. And in fact, it's like almost the same word as when you're blowing on a spark to get a fire going, right? So that kind of breath, and so it really creates kind of like life is kind of like a fire. Right? So Adam, and Adam is missing a mate, and so he sleeps, and when he wakes up, he's missing a curved bone. And he now has Eve as a partner, right? And what have you heard the curved bone is supposed to be called? A rib. Well, actually, we have all of our ribs. The one curved bone that man doesn't have.
Tail. Oh. Yeah.
I mean, I have one. I was in Nome for 6 weeks when I was in the Army, and while I was there, it wasn't that much to do. I brought some books with me, but one of the things was engaging with the natives, and what a lot of them did was they would carve or make art, and they would sell it. And I was curious about one of these, because I could just imagine myself having one, and then when my dad came to visit Alaska, I would hand it to him and say, "Dad, you know what this is?" And my dad would look at it and say, "Some kind of a bone." By the way, that's exactly what happened. that time-space cone. I knew exactly how this was gonna play out. And then I got to point out to my dad that it's a walrus dick. Because that's where these come from. They're bigger or smaller depending on the walrus. And you can go into town, by the way, in the gift shops, and they sell them. They used to be like $100, and that was not carved. So if they carve them, it's way more expensive. But yes, all mammals, male mammals, have oocysts, or penis bones, except all human beings. We don't. Well, he's the one that said the answer. Rib.
Did he?
He said rib.
What's the purpose of the bone?